we are rapidly headed for a sovereign debt crisis, a dollar crisis. This is a huge, huge problem. All of these deficit chickens are coming home to roost, not just in the United States, but in Europe, in Japan. Politicians are going to be forced to deal with problems they have been sweeping under the rug for not just years, but for decades. The day of reckoning is close upon us. Europeans have their problems. The Japanese have their problems. People are going to be selling JGBs. They're selling bunds. What are they going to do with that money? They're going to do exactly what people did in the 1970s. They're going to buy gold. Commodity prices, oil prices are not going to stop rising. They're going to keep rising, which is another reason why Trump may not end the war. Because if he does end the war and then we don't get a crash in oil prices and bond yields, then what is he going to do? Then he's out of tricks. One reason to keep the war going indefinitely is because you always have something to blame the problems on. And you can claim the problems are transitory, so we don't really have to worry. We don't have to worry about $120 oil or $150 oil, because as soon as we win this war, it's going down to 50, right? That's what we can say. We don't have to worry about 6 or 7%, bond yields. We don't have to worry about an 8 or a 9 or a 10% mortgage, because that's all going to change as soon as we win the war, right? They can keep on saying that all we have to do is win this war and end this war, which we can supposedly do whatever we want. And that is creating, I think, for now, this sense of complacency. But at some point, as yields keep rising, as CPI and PPI keep rising, higher oil prices, higher food prices, something is going to break. The stock market has to break. The bond market is already breaking. And foreign currency traders are going to have to figure out what this means to the dollar. This is not good news that foreigners are losing confidence in our creditworthiness. It's not good news. This is bad news for the dollar. And it's not bad news for gold. People should be running into gold as fast as they can. The fact that gold is pulling back in the face of this just shows, again, that traders don't understand the significance of what's going on. You know, you go back and look at the 1980s, bond prices were collapsing and yields were soaring as gold went from $35 an ounce to $850. So gold went up with bond yields. The same thing is going to happen this time. Yes, we're having a bit of a correction before the next surge, but this is getting some people to think, hey, maybe gold isn't working as a hedge anymore, right? Just because it's pulling back. That's what these pullbacks are designed to do. They shake the conviction of the weak hands, people who really don't understand what is going on. Because if you're getting out of bonds, what are you going to get into? You can't get into dollars, because the real problem with bonds is that they're IOU dollars. The reason that investors don't want to hold long-term bonds is because they don't have confidence in the long-term value of the dollar. So if you don't have confidence in the dollar and you're selling your bonds, you're not going to keep your dollars, because that's the reason you're selling your bonds. You're going to buy gold. Right? Gold is what you buy when you don't want to own dollars.
New government spending plans are supposed to help the economy, but they often just create more debt and inflation. As living costs and taxes rise, frustrated everyday people are losing trust in both politicians and financial institutions.
So the prices that we have now are cheap. To me, gold in the 1970s went up to 200. Then it, went from $35 to 200. And then it went from 200 to 100. Scared a lot of people out. And then it went from 100 to 800. So I think where we are now is in that kind of a pullback. But also, the other big difference between the 1970s and now, apart from the fact that we're in a much worse financial shape than we were back then, we were able to raise interest rates to 20%. Paul Volcker had the luxury of being able to do that because we didn't have a lot of debt at that time. Today, we can't do it. In fact, if Kevin Walsh actually tries to raise interest rates anywhere near the degree that's necessary, he can't even do it. I mean, Trump would go ballistic if the guy that he sent in to the Fed to cut rates starts jacking them up. And again, 25 basis points, 50 basis points, that's not going to do anything. We need very high interest rates. I mean, 5% won't do it. Maybe 10% won't do it. We may need interest rates as high or higher than what we had in 1980. The problem is we can't survive that. There would be massive defaults. There would be a financial crisis that would make the 2008 crisis look like a Sunday school picnic, which is why it's not going to happen, which is why this time inflation is going to run out of control. They were able to contain inflation in 1980. There is no chance that they will restrain it now. So we are going to destroy the value of the dollar. And any hope that we might do the right thing just left Congress with Thomas Massie. And as I said, and I pointed this out before, even former Secretary of the Treasury, Hank Paulson, who helped, design this whole catastrophe. He was the early architect of the bailouts and the QE. He says we need a break the glass plan to deal with the fiscal crisis that's coming when foreigners don't want to buy our bonds. Well, that's happening right now. But the interesting thing about what Hank Paulson said, or more so what he didn't say we need to do something to stop the crisis. We should defuse the bomb before it explodes. No, nothing like that. Because I think he's resigned himself to the fact that we will do nothing to stop the crisis. And Trump kicking out Thomas Massie is more proof, because he's the guy that wanted to do something about it. He's the guy that didn't want to wait for the crisis. He wanted to be preemptive. He wanted to try to slow down the spending, to restore some sanity to Washington. And for that, they got rid of him. And so Hank Paulson knows there is no chance that we are going to avert this crisis. As far as he's concerned, we're going to have a crisis no matter what. And I agree. And so that's why he thinks we need an emergency plan to deal with the crisis. My point is there is no plan that can deal with this crisis. It is impossible. The only thing you can do is try to prevent it. And if you're just going to resign yourself to the fact that it's inevitable, then you have to deal with the horrific consequences. There is no get out of jail free card. There is no way to do it. We're going to have to live through the worst economic period in U.S. history. And that would include the decade that we call the Great Depression. This is going to be really bad. And really what the emergency plan is how do we deal with this collapse? How do we deal with the carnage? How do we deal with the riots and the looting and the protests? I mean, when things get really, really bad to the degree that we've never seen in this country, and riots like we've never seen, because the public is going to be up in arms when they have to endure what's coming. I mean, they think it's bad now. Wait till they see what's around the corner.
Global markets are highly unstable right now due to conflicts in Eastern Europe, tensions with China, and issues in the Middle East.
We are rapidly headed for a sovereign debt crisis, a dollar crisis. This is a huge, huge problem. All of these deficit chickens are coming home to roost, not just in the United States, but in Europe, in Japan. Politicians are going to be forced to deal with problems they have been sweeping under the rug for not just years, but for decades. The day of reckoning is close upon us. The several Fed chairmen, they've always said, it's not unsustainable. We're on an unsustainable path, right? The debt, the path is unsustainable, but we can sustain it. Well, we can only sustain it because interest rates were very low. The minute interest rates are high, then everything collapses. And that is what is happening right now. And as they say, there is no stopping this train, especially now that Thomas Massie is no longer in Congress. And I want to talk about the Herculean effort made by Donald Trump to get rid of the best congressman that we have. And in fact, Donald Trump today or yesterday said that Massie is the worst congressman in the history of this country. The worst one ever. Now, again, Trump always exaggerates, but he lies. It's not just exaggeration. He tells bold-faced lies. Donald Trump is a liar. You have to understand that about Trump. He lies. He lies constantly. You know how you can tell when Donald Trump is lying? His lips are moving, right? Now, he said Donald Trump is the worst congressman in the history of the country. I don't want to go over 250 years of congressmen. But what about the existing Congress? What about the squad? What about, let's say, AOC? According to Trump, AOC is better than Massey. How is that possible? Trump would rather have a Congress full of AOCs than Thomas Massey's. What is it about Thomas Massey that Donald Trump hates, that he thinks he's worse than one of the most radical left-wing socialists in the Congress? In fact, Donald Trump has a lot more in common with most Democrats than Thomas Massey, by far. Massey is way to the right of Trump. Trump is left of center. Trump was a Democrat most of his life, until he decided to run for president. And then he became a Republican, but he's a Republican in name only. He's the rhino. He accuses Massey of being a rhino. No, he's the rhino. And unless the Republican Party is no longer what you think the Republican Party is. The ridiculous part about it is a lot of people think Donald Trump believes in small government, freedom, the Constitution. He doesn't believe in any of that because he kicked out the one guy who does. Now, yes, Massey did vote against the Republicans on some key legislation. All of it was bad. All of it was bad. Massey voted against the big, beautiful bill. It was a horrible bill. It's too bad more Republicans didn't vote against that bill. That bill is one of the reasons that inflation is going to be so high. It's one of the reasons that interest rates are going so high, because more people didn't stand up to big government Donald Trump and not vote for that bill. Now, Donald Trump says, well, Massey voted against tax cuts. No, he didn't. He voted against the tax hike. The big, beautiful bill is a tax hike. Now, yes, did it lower income taxes? Yes, it lowered income taxes, but that's not the only tax you pay. You got a lower income tax, but the trade-off was a higher inflation tax. Inflation is going to take away more than the income tax cut gave. Thomas Massey knows that. Thomas Massey is honest. He doesn't sell his soul. He doesn't lie. He's not a political hack. He's an honest congressman. Again, that's another reason Trump doesn't like him, because he's honest. Trump doesn't like honest people. He likes liars because he likes people like himself. So if you're a liar, you like other people to lie. You don't like people to call out your lies. So the fact that the big, beautiful bill was a tax cut is a lie. It was a fraud. But Trump doesn't care because he can keep talking about this big tax cut because the public doesn't know any better. Now, what Massey was trying to do was educate the public. Trump wants to dumb them down. Just hope they don't, I'm just going to talk about how great everything is, right? And let them believe it. So he had to run out of town, Thomas Massey. It tells you a lot about Donald Trump. Who is the one guy that Trump wanted to get rid of? The guy that wants to cut government spending. The guy that actually wants to make America great again. Now, he was also against the tariffs. The tariffs actually are a tax hike. Trump is in favor of the tariffs because he doesn't think they're a tax hike. Because he's so dumb, or he's lying, because he thinks that we don't have to pay the tariffs, that the Chinese pay the tariffs, that the Mexicans pay the tariffs, that the Canadians. Thomas Massey isn't dumb enough to believe that. He tells the truth. He knows a tax increase when he sees one. That's why he's against the tariffs. He also knew that the big, beautiful bill was a tax hike. Because again, the cost of government is not what it taxes, but what it spends. Any bill that increases government spending is a tax hike. And so if the big, beautiful bill resulted in the government spending more money than before the big, beautiful bill, it is a tax hike. I don't care how you want to frame it, because within that tax hike, some taxes are reduced, but the overall tax burden goes up. The people have to pay for government. The bigger the government gets, the more expensive it is. Donald Trump wanted to make the government a lot bigger. Thomas Massie didn't. He wanted to make the government smaller. What's that? That's a conservative. That's a Republican. Donald Trump wanted big government, and he got big government, despite the fact that Thomas Massie tried to stop it, because there weren't enough Republicans willing to stand with Massie to stop it. And now it's going to be even worse. Now the fear of God is in all the Republicans. If any Republican tries to stand up for real Republican principles, you're out of here, because there's no room for actual Republicans in the Trump Republican Party. We just want Democrats in the Republican Party, or socialists. That's all we want, right? We don't want anybody that cares about the Constitution, that wants limited government, that wants sound money. Let's get rid of all those people. And by the way, Massie was one of the only Republicans to be against this war, the Iran war, which is a complete unmitigated disaster.
Wars disrupt supply chains and cause inflation to spike, making our financial future highly unpredictable. Many voters feel the political system is rigged by powerful financial interests.
Yet Trump is, he was against the war. Yeah, of course he was against the war. For one reason, we're too broke and we can't afford the war. But of course, the other reason he was against the war is because Congress never declared it. Let Congress declare the war, not the president. But people want to make a big deal. Thomas Massie voted with the Democrats against the war. Yes. But you know what? Had the war been started by Biden, the same exact war, or had Harris been elected and had she started this war, every single Democrat would have been in favor of the war. And all the Republicans would have been against it, and then Thomas Massie would have voted with the Republicans. But because a Republican started the war, all the Republicans are supporting it, and all the Democrats are against it. Because everybody but Massie, maybe a Rand Paul, but Rand's in the Senate, Massie's in the House. All the other people in the House are political hacks. They don't give a shit. They just vote their party line. In fact, a lot of Democrats were pulling for Massie to win this race. Right? They wanted Massie. Why did they want Massie? Because Massie is the furthest thing from a Democrat that you can get. Like, Massie would be in favor of eliminating the minimum wage law. How many Democrats want to eliminate the minimum wage law? None of them. Zero. Donald Trump likes the minimum wage. He would never eliminate it. But Thomas Massie would. Thomas Massie is a free market guy. He's against all of these socialist, unconstitutional programs. The last thing the Democrats would want is to keep Massie. Massie should be the number one Republican that Democrats want to get rid of, because he's the one that is the least like them, at least when it comes to economics. He's the least like them, right? The only reason that Democrats wanted Massie to win is because they don't like Trump. It was a slap in the face of Trump. So they were pulling for Massie because it would make Trump look bad. Not because they like Thomas Massie, but of course they tried to use this against him. Look at all these Democrats that are supporting Massie, as if that means they support what he stands for. They support his philosophy. No, they actually tried to label this guy the most fiscally conservative Republican in the House. They said, he was really a Democrat. He's just like AOC. He's just like Bernie Sanders. That's why they like him so much. Donald Trump wants to get rid of this guy because he's a traitor to Republicans, meaning he's a Bernie Sanders. When it's the opposite. It's Trump that's the traitor.